Hi everyone. Good morning. It's Monday. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. And I'm actually with my new co-host. My soul brother Eric Curry is joining me from San Francisco. Hi
Hi,
Eric.
everybody. How are you guys? So excited to be here. Let's get this
And hi
going.
Dolores. Looking at
Yes, hi,
comment.
Dolores.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know, Eric. You wanna say something about yourself really quick?
Sure. My name's Eric Curry. Like Sukru said, I am in San Francisco. I am really excited for the shared perspective that we're going to have and develop on this show. We have a really good mix of stories to bring here today. What about me? I give walking tours in San Francisco. I used to own a private pet care business, and I still do a little bit of pet care here and there. I'm a writer, um, and most importantly, I like Sukru said, Sukru is my soul brother, and when he asked me if I would like to co-host this with him, I was like, absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. And I just have to say before we jump into our stories today, I just thought that it'll be great to bring you on, Eric, because okay, not only Eric is my soul brother, but I just feel that there's not enough representation of Latino voices, and you are of mixed heritage, so I just wanted that voice in the live stream space, and also, okay, I rarely talk about my age, but it's inappropriate. Okay, so I'm 50 and Eric's you 28 or 29. I
28.
always forget. Okay, so yeah, so it's like generation wise, it's great. It's like intergenerational. So
We've got the United Nations in here. We've got El Salvador. On my dad's side, I'm mostly Irish and Italian.
all right.
Yeah, why not? I'm gay.
All right. Okay. So anyway, yeah, we have a lot to talk about today, and really excited to get local perspective because yeah, at least two stories are
Hyper local.
local. Yep. Yep. Okay. So let's share my screen, and this is probably the first time that I do it right. Okay.
Yay!
Yay. All right. So we are going to talk about today. Um. Okay. Let me move. Yeah. So basically we have like four stories for you, but I'll be honest, we'll probably run out of time covering like three stories, but one is something that's really, we both Eric and I feel very strongly about this, anti transgender uh bills that's being introduced. But this is not a bill. Granted, it's a just Texas governor Abbott. He's calling for caretakers, school, student. I mean, school, teachers who have like who directly deal with children. Who he's calling for them to report if they see or hear anything, gender affirming care being done to them, because he sees it as a child abuse, which is crazy. But
Ridiculous.
anyway, so that's my first story, and two is the San Francisco school board recall, which actually I got to know about, preparing for this story. It's pretty interesting. It's very, very intriguing. So, and third, this is kind of like a bomb that got dropped on us yesterday, and we are talking about San Francisco progressive, quote unquote, politics. And since yeah, and since Eric's local, I'm just so excited to hear about his insights and his take on it. So let's go to our first news. Yeah, so I pretty much said it already, what it is about, but yeah, so
What is
as a
going
start,
on in Texas?
yeah, but as a start, I just have to say it's not only Texas. I mean, okay, I mean,
Mm,
this comment is like so crazy, but like the last year, 2021, was like really the worst year for transgender people because
yeah.
and LGBTQ, other segment of LGBTQ community because uh something like 147 anti-LGBTQ, if not anti-transgender, uh, legislations have been introduced, right, in 2021
Hmm.
in 34 states. So that was like the worst year for transgender people. And it's very, very alarming, for one, I came out last year, or I came out in 2020 December, and started my transition last year, and it's just really I see it as a very, very alarming trend, and I'm not very optimistic. I think things can get very, very bad, get worse for transgender people, and yeah, so um, maybe we have like okay, so yeah, so essentially I talked about this, but yeah, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is calling on licensed professionals and members of the general public to report the parents of transgender minors to state authorities if it appears the minors are receiving gender affirming medical care.
So, do you think that the federal government has an obligation to step in this situation, like the Secretary of Health, for example? Because this is going completely against the science. It is completely going against medicine, you know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
what we know, and like psychotherapists and what therapists and counselors, I'm sure, have already agreed upon.
Right. No, I certainly agree with you, Eric. I think yeah, I think the federal government has a responsibility to step in, and especially President Biden, kind of like has been labeling himself as a great ally of transgender people.
Right.
I think we expect, a lot from him based on what he said in the past. And you are right. Actually, the author of this article was making a point that, yeah, most medical professionals in the United States agree, that this is, I mean, gender affirming care is it's a medically required procedure. So, yeah, calling it child abuse is just totally crazy, and it's just totally politically motivated, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't this the structure of this bill, or what he's calling, it's not a bill, but what he's calling it, is it similar to the bounty structure that was with the, or is that something else?
Explain to me, sorry.
That was it similar to like if people who, if he reports people and it's found that they're helping transgender minors, that there could be a bounty placed,
Oh,
or no, am I think is that
I don't know that.
okay?
I didn't get that. But I mean, it's actually this comment was actually inspired by the oh god, I'm sorry, I'm just like forgetting the very important part of the story, but it's not attorney general. What is it?
Oh no, I
It's
think
like
you
a
are
health.
right.
Yeah, it's
Was
a health.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a yeah. He made a comment that yeah, this is like the gender affirming care for minors is should be, well, he didn't say criminalized, but I think yeah. Anyway, so yeah, no, I don't know the bounty part, but the thing is though, I think I was attending a support group for parents and families of LGBTQ people yesterday, and mostly people attending were in California. But we as a community are very, very worried, about things like this. And parents, and I'm sure, like, kids themselves, I mean, some of us are feeling very, very hopeless, because it's like, one of the parents was saying yesterday that, yeah, okay, so we are here in California and things are happening in states like Texas. How do we mobilize? How do we influence this? How do we organize to make our voices heard, so that these things would not spread to other states. So yeah, it's a very, very, very it's so it's actually, even like psychologically speaking, it's very, very damaging. It's very, very hurtful. And I just can't imagine like living in Texas right now and being transgender, or families of transgender people.
From what I was reading, like one thing that even more conservative people along the spectrum of medical professionals and youth and adolescent professionals, development professionals, is that even if you're against, quote unquote, your child being trans, transgender children and adolescents have a suicide rate that's astronomically high.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, like, I could not imagine what these kids must be going through in Texas. It really breaks my heart.
Yeah. Actually, the crazy thing that I heard yesterday at this support group, and actually, but crazy but makes sense, is that, so this parent was talking about some people getting out of Texas. I mean, some families, because they are afraid for their children. So yeah, I mean, there are things like, they are actually helping people get out of Texas.
Oh, wow.
Which sounds crazy, right? I mean, it's like, what country are we talking about? What era,
Right.
But I mean, it's happening though. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, no, it's that's a spin on it that doesn't immediately come to mind. You're right, because and especially because we're becoming so polarized as a nation. I can totally see how other people or other states are becoming more, mobilized, or becoming more empowered to or see it as a competition, like who can be the most restrictive, like Florida, for example. Yeah, see, that is my thought as well, is that there's so many people that are leaving California to go to Texas. I know that there's that migration, but then apparently we've got one coming into, or where are the people that are leaving Texas going? I wonder. I would assume that they're coming to California, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is kind of a local, so many people probably don't know. So, Japanese automaker Toyota, they used to have a huge presence in Torrance, California, which is like a suburb of LA, right? But a few years ago, they moved to Texas. Simply because Texas has more business friendly laws and like tax tax structure. So they moved their U.S. headquarters to Texas. But I hear once again from many people who used to work for Toyota, because of that reason, like they did not continue to work for that company. They had an opportunity to move with Toyota to Texas, but they said, "Oh no, we are not going there. We don't want to go to Texas." And one disappointing thing that I heard actually is companies like Toyota is behind these things too, like kind of anti-trans.
Oh, you're right. Yep.
It's very, very disappointing. Anyway, but yeah,
that's something that's really not talked about either. But
right.
And we digress. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a lot to say about this, as you can see. But let's go on to next story, because like we have a lot to talk about. So next one I already clicked by mistake is a national debate over what the U.S. What the San Francisco school board recall was really about. Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yes, let's talk about this.
Yeah, yeah. So Eric, like give us like some local perspective. Like, okay, so when did this recall business like come about? Like timeline wise.
If I'm not mistaken, this has been going on for about the past year, maybe longer. It's been something it hasn't necessarily been in the national headlines for as long. But it's been a local effort here for a while. And there's this whole issue really hits on a few different nerves, a few different pieces. Like, it's a very multi-dimensional issue. You have the issue of the pandemic going on. There was a lot of overt racism being played in this. There's the issue of which you really can only understand as somebody who grew up in San Francisco, Lowell High School, which is, even though they are a public high school, they're kind of seen as separate from the rest of the high schools. Apparently it's not this way, but when I was growing up, they had their own separate application, and they had what was a quote unquote merit-based system that did not look at factors other than your quote unquote merit to get into high school. So this whole recall issue really hit on a lot of different issues. And a lot of different emotions, a lot of different viewpoints. One issue, and we were talking about this briefly before we went live. One thing and one voice that I really don't hear expressed and I don't hear heard is that of people who went to public schools in San Francisco. And we were also talking about this also, that the numbers have just fallen so much. I think, if I'm not mistaken, San Francisco has the smallest proportion of kids out of all of the major cities growing up in their cities. And in San Francisco in particular, 25% of the kids that live in San Francisco go to private school. So there's already been somewhat of this effort to really privatize schools in San Francisco. I have to say, I'm not going to in any way say that this is the general viewpoint, because obviously this recall did happen, and obviously it did happen with 70% of the vote, which, mind you, there's a couple caveats in that, because this is not with anywhere near 100% participation by registered voters. But the people, as recalls tend to go, the people that were in favor of this came out in numbers, came out in troves to cast their votes toward this recall effort. So obviously it did pass. What I have to say is that I am against this recall effort for a couple of different reasons. So my reasons for being against the recall are this. Number one, the actual members of the board that were eligible for recall were 3 out of a board of, I think, 12. So if this was a case where we can recall the entire board of 12, fine, that's one thing, and that's what people were upset about. But for whatever reason, and I don't understand, I don't really know the fine details, but for whatever reason, it was only 3. They happen to all be members of color, which again, I have a problem with. Second of all, these members the whole entire board goes up for election in November. So why are we not leaving this decision up to the voters? Because what's going to happen now is that who is going to get to select the replacements of these 3 people? Mayor London Breed, sellout Mayor London Breed, who has proven time and time and time again that she is no friend of the people. She loves the cops and she hates the homeless. We can't trust her with a decision like this. She has no business making a decision like this. This is a decision that should be left up to the people of San Francisco. That would have been made in November anyway. So I am emphatically against this recall effort. I'm upset that it happened, but I'm not of the opinion that there's a lot of people that are trying to really read into this, like, oh, what does this say about the recall effort with Chesa Boudin? Like, what does this say about the progressiveness of San Francisco politics in general? again, like with most recall efforts, the people for an election or a position to go up for recall, there has to be a significant proportion of people that are that pissed off, right? And like that are really upset and emphatic to raise the funds and the signatures necessary to put this up for a recall election, right? So just that alone shows that there's a group of people, right? And when there's again a hyper local effort, the people that are really the ones that are invested in this effort, that those are the ones that come out and vote. I don't think that it's necessarily, and again, certainly not in this case, representative of what the entire city, quote unquote, thinks or feels. Again, 25% of the city, which the number is a lot higher, but just based on the percentage of people whose kids are not in public school, they didn't vote, you know? So no, I don't think we need to read into this too much. I think it's unfortunate that this happened. It's it's a mark on our city's history, but we need to keep moving forward. And I think one can only hope, and we really need to keep the pressure and our eyes on London Breed and see who she appoints to succeed these three members that were recalled. And I'm really worried, and I hope that she doesn't end up putting somebody who's really pro charter school. Or, those are my opinions.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously you have a lot to say about this. Being a San Franciscan who went through public school system and really appreciated the education, right? So, there are several things that, like this San Francisco Standard pointed out that was very, very interesting to me, actually. So we don't want to like touch on everything, but just want to go through it. So yeah, some are saying it's the first sign of an anti-woke movement that's going to upend San Francisco politics and make waves in November's midterms.
Which again, I don't agree with. I think this was a very select group of individuals that were very upset about the situation, and they mobilized, got the issue on the ballot, and etc. It's not in, so schools shifted.
Yeah, again, like actually in the last in the support group meeting I attended yesterday, actually somebody was saying that like a lot of conservative people are voted into like local school boards like across the nation, and that's like really something we should be looking at. And yeah, so I think needless to say, I think everyone knows this, everyone who is tuning in to this show probably knows this and aware of this, but I think local elections are extremely important. Like we should be like really paying attention. We should be voting in these local elections, because it's really affects our daily life. And yeah, so
not to mention a lot of the funding that was coming and that was pushing behind this recall effort was coming from outside of San Francisco.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna get into that. That was really interesting to me. Okay, so let's see. Oh yeah, so another party is saying it doesn't have any ramifications for national politics. It's simply a story of extreme incompetence and misplaced priorities during COVID, which I kind of don't agree with, actually.
Okay, no, I want to hear that.
I don't know. I just, some people just want to characterize, want to label this as just, schooled people acting incompetent. They are not, they didn't provide like enough, educational opportunities to for kids to participate virtually, and stuff like that. Hey, yeah, maybe a little part in it, but it has a little part in it, but I don't think it's anyway. Yeah.
No, okay, no, that I totally agree with what you're saying, and then that just goes back to my first comment about about the fact that they're going to put all of the blame on the 3 board members that are eligible or being recalled. Again, I think that these are the efforts and the results of a group that was extremely that this was an issue that really mattered to them. I wouldn't say that it's a non-issue, but I think that there's a lot of details to this that people aren't understanding, and that make it not seem what it really is like.
All right, so this is
here's the
this
part.
is the
Let's talk about this part as well. The other part people are not
So
understanding.
it was billionaires in Silicon Valley buying an election. So there was this companion article in the San Francisco Standard, Money and Motives, who is paying for the school board recall and why? Yeah, it was very, very, maybe I shouldn't say fascinating, because that kind of puts me like kind of like an observer, but yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm in LA and Eric's in San Francisco, so I'm not exactly local. And so yeah, when I read this companion article, it just really shocked me that how much money was being poured into this.
Into a K to 12, like a primary school raise, like school board recall. Like, come on.
And outside of people outside of San Francisco who actually really do not have a direct stake in this. I mean, they don't have their kids in school in San Francisco school district.
I guarantee you that there is a huge push right now, a huge privatization effort, and that there is being immense pressure being put on Mayor London Breed to put somebody that's favorable towards charter schools in the 3 spots that are now available on the school board, and she's going to do it. And somebody in Silicon Valley is going to get a huge payout because of it. That's what's happening. Okay, that's what's going on. And it's really just a huge shame, because I really feel like my parents weren't wealthy. I really feel as though the opportunities that I got to attend a good college, the opportunities that I got to get a decent education, and just really the perspective that I received growing up were really all due to growing up in San Francisco. I would not agree with this take, actually, that the school issue the school issue does have national reach because San Francisco is a major city, but I would not agree that the local election has national implications. I disagree.
Why is that though? I mean, I kind of because I just feel like, okay, cities like San Francisco, since it's like really high profile city, and I mean, I just feel like, and
I think it was a case of mismanagement and a case of, I would even go as far as to say, stupidity. That there are, and mind you, this is as somebody who actually, I was in favor of the renaming effort, which is just one small little part of this, right? But are we going to focus on renaming schools before we're going to focus on getting the schools open? My mother's a teacher, and I saw how her job role shifted, and she now had so many things on her plate, and she had to do so many different micro tasks that were nowhere near related to her actual job, right? To what she actually was brought on board to do, her job description. So yes, this is a case of gross mismanagement. This is a case of incompetence and misprioritization. Sure, absolutely. I believe that we need to tighten what I think that we should be learning from this, and perhaps even this is the national implication of this, is I think we need to change the rules for recalls. I think that recalls should be made, it should be more difficult to overturn the voter's choice and undo an election, a democratically held election. That's what I think. I don't think it shouldn't be possible for corporations to dump, and billionaires who don't have the best interest, obviously, right, of a city and its residents, to dump all of this money from outside of the city to buy an election. Those are the implications that we should be taking from this. That's what, or those are the consequences. That's what we should be learning from this. The lessons. Pardon me.
Right. So, oh yeah, so this was like what you were kind of touching upon in that last comment. Yeah, so some say it's about punishing POCs for pursuing social justice, and an unpopular school renaming effort that actually originated with a white guy. The white guy, like it's Matt Haney, right? I mean, they're referring to.
Oh, I think you're, because I'm thinking, I don't know who they're
Yeah,
referring to
it's
that
Matt
actually
Haney. That,
originated with the
yeah,
white guy.
yeah.
That would not surprise me. Matt Haney shakes hands with whoever he needs to shake hands to. He doesn't even know what the hell he stands for. He's so damn spineless. It would not surprise me one bit. I mean, it's telling. I mean, come on, in the assembly race that he's now in, all of the board of supervisors, almost all of them endorsed Campos, who I don't really have very much nice things to say about either. But again, this is a case of misprioritization of but this is real. Okay, this is really talking to what I said in the beginning. That one thing that really bothers me about this race is that the three people that they are targeting are all members of color, and these just so happen to be the three that are eligible for recall. If this was about recalling the entire board, that's another thing. And yeah, the renaming effort, even though I am ultimately for that, it's not a high priority item. It's actually a quite expensive item.
Right.
It's an interesting take. I don't, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of agree.
Yeah, I just thought this, the San Francisco Standard article was kind of interesting because it just gives you, whether you agree with it or not, like they give you a lot of like different perspectives,
hold on.
interpretations.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No. You know something that I didn't mention. So again, there's a real racist aspect to this because number one, it is one of the school board members that was recalled made
right.
I don't think her comments were racist, to be honest, and there'll be plenty that disagree with me. I think that I would have chosen a different way of saying it, and you might not agree with the way that she said this, but actually her take is accurate, in my opinion. So she really upset another group of people, but also the recall or what's going on at Lowell High School, like I mentioned, their merit-based admission system is thought to favor Asian people. That's one school of thought. And so the thought that was that behind that recall effort, or that if you were against the recall, then you were in favor of getting rid of this merit-based system, which again, Asians took to say that was racist against them. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so this is like what Eric's talking about. It's what happens when Asian parents think you're messing with their children's education. So that involves this local high school, Lowell High School. I guess, like as you mentioned, predominantly white and Asian because I guess currently they employ merit-based system, right? So the majority of the students are white and Asian, and I guess claims Black and Latino kids are sort of being pushed out or barred.
They absolutely are, and I think she meant to say desegregating.
Right. Yeah.
As was my high school. My high school was predominantly Asian as well, and we didn't have San Francisco, and the way they do their high schools is so interesting because it's such a touchy issue. Like I remember when I went to high school, like the decisions were announced and it was like put on the newspaper headlines, like when the decisions were coming out. High school is kind of a big deal in Sanford Public High School.
Right. Yeah.
I don't disagree with this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree that, and actually, Suker and I were talking about this earlier. That what I do think that this is. Oh no, not Suker. Another friend and I were talking about this earlier. How not even to get into this too much, but I've never experienced homophobia as blatantly as I have since moving back to San Francisco. And I have many people that tell me that they have never experienced racism more blatantly than in San Francisco, which might be shocking to a lot of people. But I think that is this a case of this is a rather new phenomenon in San Francisco, or have these people always been there and they have more recently been emboldened, right, with the past administration? And I think it's really a combination of both. I think, and also the populace, or the people who have moved into San Francisco more recently, the general population in San Francisco, has become a lot more gentrified, a lot wealthier, a lot more, and somewhat more conservative. And but the thing is, there has always been a conservative voice in San Francisco. They just have never felt so emboldened as they have in these past few years.
Another article that I found interesting, though, I think it's another San Francisco Standard article that, so even though, okay, so as they point out, or as they allege here, that Asian parents, this really angered Asian parents, so they voted, and a lot of them voted, so that's why the recall was passed. But another article says, in terms of how many Asians voted, it's actually really not that different from the how they vote in other elections in the past. So it's not like more people, more Asians came out to vote, was what the article was saying. And I kind of found that interesting because even though the sort of picture was painted as that, this Asian really influenced this election, but may not be the case. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I did read that, and I would be interested in looking at the numbers a little deeper, because that I can see how that might be the case. But I also think I want to see what was the actual turnout for this election. If I remember, it was in the low 20s, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a very low turnout. But I do remember reading that it was pretty every neighborhood kind of had this general consensus that they wanted to go forward with this recall effort. What I will say is that even though the numbers don't back up the statement that this was an effort that was spearheaded by Asians showing up in numbers, this on the community effort, and as far as visibility, this was the announcement and the marketing, if you can call it that, of the recall effort, was very predominant, was very visible in the Asian communities, like in Chinatown, in the little Asian pockets around San Francisco. That's where I really saw a lot of this signage and a lot of visible efforts for trying to get people on board with the recall effort.
Yeah. I mean, I just hope that actually kind of departing from this particular issue. So, I mean, Asians, in San Francisco, San Francisco Bay Area in general, number-wise, they really hold political power.
They're very...
But historically speaking, they don't vote.
No.
Right? Yeah. So that's kind of what bothers me. I mean, okay, so for instance, Nancy Pelosi, anti-Asian violence that's been happening, I mean, really, okay, so they really try very hard to paint that as blaming on Trump, because he was the one who originally said, China virus
and Kung flu.
But then the Biden administration continues with anti-China propaganda. So, actually, if you look at that, um, democratic establishments are not really being our friend. Asian. It's like, they're
Right.
not our friend, and I just hope that I know that Chinese community in San Francisco, really supported Nancy Pelosi over the years, but I hope they really come out. Will come out in 2022 and make their voices heard, because we are hurting and we are actually, many of us are dissatisfied with what's happening. Um, not enough effort has been made to stop anti-Asian violence. It won't. Oh, it's still continuing not only major cities like San Francisco, New York, LA, but all over the country. And seems like the rest of the country actually, like non-Asian population, has forgotten that this is
Yeah.
happening, or not seeing it's happening, but it is happening in our communities. So I just hope that like Asian community will come out this year, for the for our general election, primary and general election en masse, and make our voices heard. I think it's necessary.
Asian people and working class people in general, we really need to get behind our numbers, join forces, and get these not just the incumbents, but people who are not serving working class people have no business serving in office. Period.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so hold on, I'm just gonna now we are
Oh, here we
going
go.
into our third story. I just realized, like, we spent so much time on the school board recall thing, and we are just forgetting about the rest of the story. But anyway, yeah, the third story. Yeah, okay. So it was kind of like dropped on our head like a bomb, so to speak.
Bombshell.
Oh yeah, it was actually on Saturday, right? It
Mm-hmm.
came out. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I remember like having a conversation with you on the bus,
Yep.
just going out, and
In the middle
you
of my
told me.
tour, this
Yeah,
article
yeah.
gets dropped.
Right. Yeah, so this article is like such a wow. It's very, very loaded, very complicated story. So obviously we won't read an entire article today on this show. So we strongly encourage you guys to find it online.
Yes, please take the time to read and share this article. I
Yeah.
would really, we really need to get the news out about this.
Yeah, so yeah, if you Google it, Marina Times, Shahid Batar, probably it'll hit on this article. So yeah, not too hard to find, but God, okay. So this is a very, very serious story. I mean, allegation against the San Francisco progressives, progressive politics.
Progressive.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, okay. So this is a complicated story, but Eric, do you wanna would you like try giving the overview of the story?
So I think that this saying right here, the Democratic Socialists of America, San Francisco, aka DSASF, are about to ruin the political career of a brown Muslim man based on no evidence at all because a bunch of mediocre Karens complained he was mean to them. This statement was made by Gloria Berry, who is a chair of the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee. And this describes San Francisco's quote unquote left in a nutshell. This is what happened to Shahid is something that should concern everybody. It should this I truly believe does have national implications, and I think that this should be this should be scary not only to candidates of color, and to LGBTQ candidates, but really people need to realize that this is going on in the city, quote unquote city that is known for being progressive and forward thinking, especially in matters of social, social issues, social justice, and civil rights, etc. Shahid was smeared, point blank. He was smeared. He was accused of sexual harassment. And the thing is that it was such a poor job. It was such a pathetic job that when that didn't work, they went forward with allegations of workplace harassment. And then that's kind of where things started to unravel. And so many people bought this lie, so many people bought this BS that his campaign took a significant hit because of it. And what really is so infuriating is that when you look into this effort and when you look into the details of what happened, it's not an effort that was led by Nancy Pelosi and the establishment. This was led by the quote unquote progressive left of San Francisco, namely people like the Harvey Milk Club, San Francisco Bernicrats, Our Revolution, DSA San Francisco. And there are so many different levels to what happened and so many different layers to all of this. And that's another thing that is really so upsetting about this, is that not one person had the courage to come forward and say, wait a minute, this is where this thing stops. Wait a minute, this isn't right. Wait a minute, this is like, we have to take another look. But what you really see happen is that this was a very coordinated effort by a handful of individuals who were rewarded with things like board seats, higher positions in some of the clubs that they were already serving in. Exactly, progressives. And really at the expense of, Shahid's reputation in a city like San Francisco, and in a small city like San Francisco. Like, it's, let's unpack this a little further, Tsukuru.
Right. Okay. So so basically this gives you like overview, of what you told us about right now. So
Shahid, he's the first Democrat since 1987 to face Speaker Pelosi in a general election. And he got 22.4% of the vote, which was much more than any candidate has gotten. And he was the first candidate actually to pass the 20% mark since 1990. And then it kind of, again, a lot of this unraveled when there were some false accusations of sexual assault, sexual harassment. And then when that didn't work, they went as far as to label him a misogynist and that he harbored an unsafe workplace. And again, what is extremely upsetting is that this was not done by the establishment. It was done by the very people that actually got him to run to begin with.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So for everyone listening, as full disclosure, I mean, we have been organizing healthcare related rallies and events in San Francisco, and Shahid has been a speaker for us.
He's a regular speaker at our events.
Two of our events, so far, and actually, okay. So when I being a not a San Francisco resident and LA resident, when I heard about Shahid, and also when I not only about the incident or alleged incident, but also started to hear about him from people who worked with him, and really started to hear very favorable things even after the allegation. And this is just my personal experience with him, that upon meeting him at the events that we hosted, I just feel that he's a very, very solid candidate. But not only solid candidate, but he really come from activism though. So I think he has enough credibility. But I just wanted to say that because say that we are affiliated with him somewhat, because I don't want any people after this show to come out and say, oh, but you are affiliated with him. And I just wanted to disclose that so that people can
we know
their own
Shahid.
judgment. So so okay, so this article is so
It really
complicated, so
goes
rich.
in
Yeah, it
depth.
goes deeply, and there are a list of characters that have
Mhm.
that appear. So this quote, maybe I didn't quote it in the best of the ways, but Brooks, actually I know her personally as well. So yeah, she's working as a volunteer for Shahid's campaign as well. She's a PR person, and but she herself is a survivor of sexual assault. She was deeply concerned about members of San Francisco Barneycrats using the Me Too movement to attack brown Muslim men. So she's really, speaking in support of Shahid, speaking out. And ever since this article came out, she's been very vocal on Twitter as well about this article and about the allegation. So yeah, but I just wanted to quote this because it just, yeah, anyway, I'm just gonna read it because it may be kind of too small. But Brooks, who is herself a survivor of sexual assault, was deeply concerned about members of the San Francisco Barneycrats using the Me Too movement to attack a brown Muslim man. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter way before he got in the race. They are a group in part of our revolution, which is national. I decided to testify at their hearing about Shahid with my Bernie perspective. Brooke says, I told them if it was about treatment of staff, they should unendorse Barney because way worse things were said about him being sexist. San Francisco Barneycrats then chairman Brandon Harami told Brooks she was speaking nonsense and told her to get a life. He also called her a harasser and deleted her post from a public forum. I was trying to tell the truth. Brooks says they don't care about survivors. Okay, I can't read the list, but so I just wanted to, well, I mean, okay, um so this this quote, behind this quote, there was things that are not, we are not explaining very well. So I will just kind of quickly explain. So um after, people started to say, oh, maybe, like, okay, groups like San Francisco Barneycrats, they did not do due diligence on these accusations, and they just kind of, pick them up and run with it. So then they kind of like started to switch the narrative by saying that, okay, maybe he is not he's not he did not do these like sexual assaults, but he was a bad boss. He created the toxic work environment. So that's what Brooks here in the quote, that's what she's referring to. So yeah, so they kind of started to say, oh, maybe Shahid is not a sexual predator, but like he was a bad boss. Um, which, having a bad boss myself and working in a toxic environment for 21 years, it's no small matter. But
But
however,
it's also much different from sexual
yeah,
assault.
exactly, right. So yeah, it's very questionable. And
Here, I'll read this next
yeah,
quote. To believe any of the various lies fabricated about me to mislead voters and insulate a corrupt establishment required journalists to not only ignore whistleblowers, disregard evidence, but also overlook conflicts of interest among sources who were rewarded by the party establishment. Buttar says every local writer did exactly that, while several of them appeared to have been getting paid under the table by a former tech executive with his own conflicts of interest that remained unreported for the past 2 years. These lies were concocted by a small number of self serving political careerists, but ultimately the entire party made itself complicit. That was another, again, layer to this that was not, I don't think, is very well known, is that there was actually payments being made to several different small news outlets here in San Francisco, followed by them removing their endorsements of Shahid. Like, it's just, the corruption is so disgusting, like every every election, you know, in this country is so bought. And the part that is so frustrating is, again, this wasn't an effort that was led by Nancy Pelosi and the establishment. It was led by a bunch of mediocre Karens, you know, and people who like to bitch and moan and on the freaking left here. Like, I wouldn't trust anybody that comes through Harvey Milk Club. Honestly, they're a bunch of sellouts. In 2020, they endorsed, not only did they endorse Nancy Pelosi, but a month before what ended up becoming the largest civil rights movements in US history, right? The George Floyd protest. A month before that, one of their members, or they sent out a racist email, and then they got their one black board member to come out with an apology statement. And I mean, guys, when you really look into this, the levels to this is really disgusting. I mean, they had one of their black members say, to tell Shahid staffers, hey guys, it's not worth it going out to Bayview Hunters Point, which is a historically African American district here in San Francisco, you know, because there's no votes out there. And that's honestly just the tip of the iceberg, and we don't have enough time to really go into this, but this was an effort that was led by the white queer establishment here in San Francisco, but also there were many on board of a lot of these clubs and members that are people of color themselves, which is just really scary, to say the least.
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, as you said, this is like, you know, this is a very, very complicated, in-depth article. So I encourage you guys to like find it online and read it. But at the same time, I just, I'm sure we will hear, or I hope we will hear more about this. This meaning, like, you know, how compromised San Francisco progressive politics are at this point, and we will hear more about that. But not only that, I think what's disturbing to me, like, directly from this quote, is that like even the leftist media that we rely upon are somewhat like bought out by certain by people with certain interest of their own. So that's very shocking to me, and I think I think I really hope that we'll get to the bottom of this, because it's like not only talking about it is not enough. If we just talk about it and then like there's like no consequence for their actions, that's really no point of talking about that. So let's see. Okay, we have 2 minutes left, so I don't know what else you want to touch on.
In the 2 minutes that we have left, just because this is such an important issue, again, this is a race that has national implications, even though it is a race here in San Francisco. Of course, Shahid Buttar running for Congress here in California's 12th district. I would highly encourage anybody watching this to check out the Medium article by Gloria Berry.
Right. Okay.
She really goes in depth, and then compare this one to the Marina Times, and you really get a much clearer picture of what happened. And a lot with this whole smear effort, the people that were promoted in a lot of these clubs who participated in this effort and how they were rewarded. This I do believe has national implications, because if this can happen in the quote unquote progressive bastion, it can happen anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So again, the article that we majorly quoted today was from Marina Times. So Google that Marine Times with Shahid Buttar. The keywords should hit on this article, and also as Eric said, Gloria Berry, Medium article. That's
oh no, it's on Substack. Pardon me.
Oh, it's Substack. Okay.
Gloria Berry's is on
Gloria
Substack.
Berry.
Pardon me.
Yep. Okay.
And I think it's called like White Supremacy Exists in San Francisco, or it has white supremacy in the title. That's a very in-depth article as well.
All right. Great. Okay. So I think we hit the 11 a.m. mark. That's it for us this week. And next week, Eric will be on vacation.
I will be
Washington, D.C. So
that's where I'm going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll be with another co-host. I don't know who. I'll find it. So, but yeah. Thank you so much for being with us, guys. And I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you, everybody. Good to
Thank
be
you.
here. Bye.
Let's see.